أهلا وسهلا فيكم متابعينا حلقة جديدة من برنامج شرايها عليا. اليوم عندي حوار جديد عن السرطان مع الطبيب اللي تحاورت معه من قبل في أكثر من حلقة موجودة على يوتيوب، دكتور السرطان دكتور توماس لودي. والحلقة بتكون حوارنا بيكون باللغة الإنجليزية، ولكن موجودة الترجمة، لازم تدخلون لها في الإعدادات. إذا تتابعون البرنامج من جهاز النقال من الموبايل، فوق على اليمين في 3 نقاط، تدخلون في الإعدادات من الفيديو وتضغطون على الترجمة، تطلع لكم الترجمة. Thank you very much, Dr. Lodi, for coming with us today. It's great to have you back on the show.
Thank you. My pleasure.
I wanted today to talk about a topic that I get asked about a lot, and I'm curious about myself as well. The topic of water fasting for cancer healing, for healing in general, but specifically because we're talking about cancer, water fasting for cancer healing. So my first question is, how often do you do it, and when does it come as the preferred treatment for cancer in terms of alternative healing?
Well, good question. It's the preferred treatment anytime that it's possible. The only times that it's not possible is when a person is already in a condition of starvation. So if in medical terms we call that cachexia. If somebody is already cachexic, they can't do it. And cachexia means that the body is now consuming itself for energy. So, which means it has already consumed all the fat. And I'm not just talking about belly fat or leg fat, but we're also talking about the fat that is in between the fibers and the muscles, the fat that's around organs called visceral fat. You know, there's a lot of fat in the body, and there's a certain amount of fat that we need to be in balance and to be healthy. So, most people nowadays have well beyond what's necessary for balance and health. So most people have excess. But anyway, so the only contraindication that I find are that someone really has no more reserves at all to do it. You know, the other thing is that some people have, they've come to me and they already have intractable vomiting. They can't stop vomiting, or they, and stuff like that. So there are situations where we can't. But in most cases, and when I speak to people before they come, I usually mention that as a potential option, which they could do and never come see me. However, since we're talking about a prolonged water fast, it's really something that should be supervised. It really does need medical supervision. And of course, you couldn't ask the typical standard doctor to do medical supervision of a fast, because he wouldn't. First of all, they don't understand the parameters of fasting. They don't understand what is a fast. They don't understand the, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So they wouldn't be able to help you along with it. But if you had a, like, there are places that are dedicated to it. Like, for example, in Northern California, there's a place called True North. There's a couple other places in the U.S. There are some places in South America where people can go and just do water fasting. But when it comes to cancer, as in all diseases, all conditions, it is the master. It's the king. It's the king of healing.
So would you start with it? Like, what would make you start with a juice fast with intravenous vitamins, for example, versus a water fast when a cancer patient comes to you?
Just the person's ability to, well, okay. Really, probably 90% of the decision is based upon the person's inner psychology. The person must not just believe it's going to work, but they must know it's going to work. And the person must be fearless about it. They must say, this is what I need to do. I've been reading about it. I understand it. This is what needs to happen. And then they do it. They do it with an attitude of gratitude, an attitude they're positive, they're optimistic, right? But if they enter into fear and doubt, then it's not going to work. And the other thing is they have to have a family that's supportive. If the family is always questioning them and making them, feel guilty and all that sort of thing, again, it won't work. So you've got to have the proper psychological, emotional, and familial dynamics and relationships all in line in order to do it successfully. because it goes in the complete, flies in the face of what we call logic. And what our logic that we grew up in is that you need to eat, you must eat. What are you doing? You're not eating. If you want to get energy, you need to eat, blah, 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 blah. So we think that not eating would be stupid, right? That's basically, so anyway. But that's usually the biggest obstacle of doing it, of not doing it. So with many people, there are very few that come in. Well, the ones that we've had lately that come in and they successfully do 40 or 41 or 42 days water cleanses are people that came in with the intention of doing the other program with all
the juices.
Yeah, and all that for a limited period of time, and then some specific therapeutic diet after that. But in our discussions, in our early discussions, when they realized that, yeah, you can do all of that, or you cannot do that and do this, and some of them have said, okay, then what am I doing? Of course, let me do that. So those have been the people, but it's that kind of attitude, and it has to be that. So what I have to say is that I'd say 99% of the people are just not ready for it, right? And that's okay, because we can still get to our desired goal in other ways. It's just that what I want people to always keep in mind is that the only cure handed down by God. The reason I say that is because all creatures, from lizards to owls to horses to elephants, when they're sick, they stop eating. They drink water, and they do it's a water fast, and they do it until when? Until they're better. That's when they do it. So they do it as long as they need to do it until they're better. And since they're not dealing with any of the obstacles that our minds present to us, they're just under the auspices of instinct. They don't have any conflicts. They just say, okay, they stop eating, and they drink water, and then, wow, they get better and they heal. So I know that this is, since it comes through instinct, we know it's divine, and it goes through all creatures. So it's a wonderful thing to do. I can explain to you.
What's the duration? I'm curious because you said 41, 42 days. Is that the standard duration for a water fast, or do you recommend it based on the stage of cancer that they're at? Because that might be what puts people off, right? I mean, most people can handle 2 or 3 days of water fast, but when you say 41, that's when it becomes a bit scary.
So in order to really understand the answer, let's kind of just understand the physiology of fasting. Okay, so there are two fuel systems the body, not only our body, but any mammal can live on. One is fat and one is glucose. Now, most organisms, mammals, when born, are ketogenic. They're living on fat because milk is more fat than anything else. So a breastfed infant who's purely breastfed is going to have ketones in their blood. They're going to be ketotic in ketosis. The same with a breastfed cow, a breastfed horse, a breastfed dog. All of them, they're going to have. And it's interesting. We now know that the actual organ growth proceeds in a much healthier fashion in ketosis than it does on a glucosis, in being on a glucose run metabolism. Okay, so now also this ketosis, this ability to burn fat for fuel, is hardwired into nature, and it's hardwired into being healthy. What I mean by that is all animals in nature eat intermittently. No animal finds enough food to eat 3 times a day every day. An animal might eat a lot for 2 days and not eat it all for a week or longer, and then they might. So animals live. The nature of nature is that most animals live in a system what we now have termed or coined intermittent fasting. So intermittent fasting is really the way nature is. And when we understand what happens during fasting, we'll understand why that's hardwired into nature. And it's not just God being mean to us and saying, okay, you're not going to eat for a couple days. Because, if God can do anything, then he should have given everything abundant food all the time so they can eat all the time. Yeah, but on that, none of us would, no creature would live very long. Okay, so basically, So just to understand, there are two basic fuels that can run the metabolism of biology. Okay, either fat or glucose. Okay, now glucose is what most creatures use most of their adult lives. It's a fundamental basic fuel, and the difference between the fuel from glucose is that it's more rapidly obtained. You know, you get it right now. You get it right now. The fat has to go through a little longer process. Okay, but again, we can't keep doing it. So now let's look at the body as being as having two fundamental types of work it's doing. Number one, if we're going to look at it in terms of fuel, number one is when the body is taking in food, then all of the machinery of the body, of the cells, is designed to process this fuel, process the food, digest it, break it up, digest it, absorb it into the blood, and then separate it and put it into different parts of the body, and it's doing all that. And then the cell gets it, and the cell's using it and all that. So all the machinery is based on processing and obtaining fuel. Okay? Now, during that process, all the little organelles that are in the cells that are doing the work, like the mitochondria that make energy, the ribosomes, etc., that make proteins, and all these little organelles are busy working, and they therefore they suffer from the same thing that everyone suffers from if you work a lot, and that's called wear and tear. You get wear and tear, and you basically break down. So one of the well-known things that happens to people when they get older is called osteoarthritis. It's also called the arthritis of wear and tear. You know, a person who's has a job where they're having to bend up and down every day, by the time they hit 50 or 60, their knees are going to be a little different than the guy who didn't have to do that because he had wear and tear. So basically, that's how it is. So our intracellular organelles have wear and tear all day, and they're all busy processing. So it's not until we stop processing food that our body will now clean up. And why does it clean up? Because regardless of whether we're eating or not eating, our body, each cell has the requirement of maintaining approximately 1 billion energy packages called ATP. Each cell must have approximately 1 billion at any second in order to run the machinery. So when the fuel is coming in, the glucose is coming in, it's being processed, and it's making energy, it's making ATP. Well, now I stopped eating, there's glucose coming in, still that energy. So what does it do? It turns on a system inside the cells called the lysosomal system. And the lysosomes, therefore, start taking all the worn out organelles and processing. It's called recycling them for energy. It'll grab this part, that part, and so they're the recyclers. Okay, they're kind of the eco-green friendly garbage man. Instead of the garbage man that picks up everything, they're doing it in an eco-friendly way. So they ecologically go in and they take apart this and take apart that, and they use this for fuel. They save this as a part to be used later on, etc. So it's kind of an organized way of cleaning house. And it's called autophagy. And it's what the Nobel Prize was awarded in medicine, I think, 2 years ago. It was for a Japanese guy who actually defined the whole autophagy process, and it's now taken off, and it's become very well known throughout all of biology. So when you're not eating, the lysosomal system like the cell starts recycling things. So I just want to give you an idea what happens when you go to sleep at night. When you go to sleep at night, it's one of the only ways God could get us to finally stop eating was to put us to sleep. So finally we go to sleep, we stop eating for a little while. When we're not eating, then that system is turned on and it cleans up the mitochondria. Remember I mentioned that mitochondria are the little parts inside the cell that make energy. They take glucose, oxygen, and they produce energy. Okay? So now you stopped eating, so you have no more glucose coming in. So now, but what happens is that during that process of the glucose and the oxygen, they have wear and tear, and they start breaking down. So normally, the glucose molecule makes 38 energy packages called ATP. So that's in the morning when you wake up and you're really full of energy. By 6 p.m., you might be making 34 for every molecule of glucose. By 9 p.m., you might be making 29, and you're tired and you're walking around, you just don't have the energy. Now you crawl into bed, You go to sleep, you wake up full of energy. What happened? Your lysosomes ate up all the defective mitochondria, and when you gobble them up, it stimulated their proliferation. So now, in the morning, your cell is full of healthy, plump, effective mitochondria again. So you leap out of bed. So you got the energy not from eating, but from not eating. So when you don't eat, you get the opportunity to process what you've already eaten and to clean up the machinery that was doing the processing. And without that, if you're eating 3 meals a day and snacks, you almost never get a chance to clean house. And what happens when you clean house? You accumulate waste. And if we had to look at any cause, any fundamental cause of cancer, it's that. It's accumulated waste over time. So that's why cleaning out, detoxification, is usually the fundamental primary thing you need to do with cancer. And it's not just you do it now and you're done. It's something you learn to do throughout your life. And we teach people how to live that way. So anyway, the point is this, is that you revive, renew all of the intracellular equipment so that your cells can be more effective, you're producing more energy, etc. Obviously, if you stop eating forever, you're going to not live because you'll run out of, so you need to eat again. But I just want that to be clear that it's just like people say, I mean, it would be an absurd question if I were to ask you, what do you think is more important, day or night? Well, neither are more important. They're both necessary. Okay? Well, that's exactly what it is. Eating is as necessary as not eating. Okay, so now what happens, so all in nature, they'll eat for 2 days, 3 days, and they won't eat for a week. That allowed them to renew, to clean up, and they're starting all over again. So they don't accumulate waste, which is why wild animals, before we poisoned the earth, wild animals died of old age, trauma, or starvation. They didn't get diseases. So they didn't get those things. They didn't get heart attacks and cancers and stress, and they didn't get depression, insomnia. Yeah. Okay, so all those things. But anyway,
so I have a few questions. The first question is, would they get the same benefits from doing a shorter water fast, like a 20-day water fast or a 7-day water fast? That's the first question. And the second question is that you said that it's better to do a water fast supervised. I'm curious what you're supervising for. Like, what are you looking for? Are they potentially might lose some electrolytes? Would they faint? Would they, like, what are you, why is it necessary, or why do you feel it's important to be supervised during a water fast?
Okay, yeah, good question. So number one, is a shorter duration effective? Yes, absolutely. If you keep in mind that it takes 72 hours for the body to use up all of its stored glucose. Glucose is stored in the liver and in the muscles in starch, as a starch called glycogen. And so the body just breaks down the glycogen and uses the glucose. So during the first 3 days of a water fast, not yet in ketosis, you're not in therapeutic ketosis, you're still basically running on glucose metabolism. And it's during that part, the first 3 days of the water fast, that are probably the most difficult, because that's where your appetite is on fire, and you're thinking, this is crazy, I should be eating, you know. So I almost have a contract with people that we lock you in a room for 3 days and just put water under the door, and no matter how much you scream, we're not going to open the door. And then on day 4, we'll open the door to a smiling person. If I opened it on day 2, you would choke me. Anyway, but I mean, that's literally it. It's the first 3 days. So really, when you say a short fast, if someone, I'm going to do a 3-day water fast, and I say, that's great, but you're just about ready to make it easy and start to get the true benefits on day 4 and day 5. So yeah, a 7-day water fast is 4 days of actual benefit. A 10-day water fast is 7 days of actual benefit. Because once you've used the glucose and you're now burning ketones, here's the other thing that which is what makes a water fast so important. And that is, there's a whole system of enzymes that are turned on that go after all non-viable tissue and recycle it for fuel. So that means every cyst in the breast, in the kidneys, in the liver, every plaque in the artery, every little pocket of abscess anywhere, any tumor anywhere, any non-viable tissue, that means tissue that's not necessary for the functioning of the organism, is eaten and used for fuel. So that's why people go in. For example, they do an angiogram and they see that their coronary arteries are 95% blocked. You go on a water fast for 10 days and you go back and you find out your arteries are clean. You've just eaten up all that stuff. And there's no other way to do it. That is how it happens. So that's the benefit of it. That's why I say that. So the longer you do that, because here's the question. I have people here on day 40 and day 41, right? Their ketones are high, 7.5, 8, right? But where's the glucose coming from? Why do they have 90 glucose? 90. Let me see. What is 90 in? It's different systems. You just take the number and you divide by 18 to get it in the right units. Okay, I get 5. A 90 would be a 5. People that are looking at millimoles per liter instead of milligrams per deciliter. Yeah. So, well, why would they have that? That's because they're recycling all the non-viable tissue. So here's what I look for in a water fast. I look for, number one, if you're still keeping your ketones at 6, 7, then I know you've still got fat reserves. So in other words, in terms of energy, you're still capable of surviving, doing well. Now the ketones go down to 5. Now they're down to 3. Now if I see a rapid fall, they're down to 2. Right around 2, I'll say, okay, it's time. Let's break fast, because you can't just break it. We'll talk about that in a minute. Let's start the transition back to eating, right? Like that. So if we see that kind of decline, we know we're running out of visceral fat and other kinds of fat.
So that's what you would be supervising for,
that's
in essence. Okay. And electrolyte imbalances, is that an issue at all with water fast?
Right. So let's get to that question. What we're looking for, here's probably the most dangerous thing that happens during a water fast, is that people do not drink enough and they become dehydrated. They don't realize it. But when we put together the amount of water that you lose through urination and what's called insensible water loss, that means through sweating and through breathing, right? When we look at that, it comes to close to 2.5 liters a day, 2.5, maybe more liters a day, which means you need a minimum of that just to keep things going. And that's if you're just sitting in the chair. But if you're getting up and you're active at all, then you need even more water. But people just don't drink that much. They're just not drinking that much. And if their hormones are imbalanced and they've got a lot of other problems, it's not even getting absorbed completely. It's going right through and all that. So, in other words, that's it, staying hydrated, because if you're not hydrated, your machinery won't work. It really needs water.
But there's no risk of diluting, over-diluting? Because that's always what you hear, like even athletes who are losing a lot of electrolytes, who over-dilute with water. So I'm thinking all of that...
athletes are a different mindset. These are people that are focused on health, and they're going to drink past their normal thirst. They're going to say, no, I need to keep drinking, and they're likely to dilute. But the average person on a fast is not likely to dilute. In fact, by day 3 or 4, they don't really want to drink water that much. They kind of lose their taste for water. They just don't drink that much. But so one of the things I do is I have our nurses do what's called orthostatic vital signs. And that is where you take the blood pressure and the pulse sitting and standing. And if there's a significant change in the systolic or the diastolic or the pulse from sitting to standing, then we know they have, it's called hypovolemia. They don't quite have enough volume. So they need to get more fluids. So since people say, well, I just can't drink anymore, then we would give them an IV. We would give them an IV of what? Just normal saline, normal amount of salt and water balance that the blood normally has. The blood usually has 0.9% saline. So, that's the normal saltiness of the blood. So you just basically, it's a way of getting the water in you without drinking. So that's what we find. We usually have to do that more so on basically by the end of the first week. We're finding that just to keep, otherwise people start not drinking and then they don't feel good and they say this is not working good. They're getting a headache, their bowels aren't moving, things like that. So, but you don't need medical supervision. People have been fasting for millennia. Moses, 40 days, 80 days. He came down and went up and did another 40 days. So people have done fasts for a long time. without medical supervision. But you got to make sure you're drinking a lot. Otherwise, I'm telling you, you can have a lot of times elderly people come into the emergency room and we think that they're Alzheimer's. They're delirious, they're hallucinating. You give them a liter or two of water and all of a sudden they're back to normal. So the effects of dehydration are profound. We don't realize them, and they're very subtle and you won't recognize them. So that what I say. Now in terms of electrolytes, what we do to just preclude that is we recommend that everybody who's doing a water fast get some Himalayan or similar type sea salt, and about twice a day, put a half a teaspoon or a teaspoon in a short glass of water and just drink it. And make sure you have enough of the salt, and then you don't have to worry about electrolytes. Because your body and your kidneys know how to maintain electrolyte balance, right? So yeah, that's the thing. I don't ever worry about diluting because I've never had somebody drinking too much water. Never.
Okay, two questions. First question is, have you had a case of cancer where you've seen significant improvement in tumor size or the actual condition of cancer improved after a water fast? And the second question is, if one were to try this at home or start this at home, what would be your recommendations? Because I imagine the quality of the water also plays a role, right?
Yes. Wait, what was the first part of the question?
A case where you've seen it working.
Well, my first example that my exposure to this in terms of cancer was a fellow who had, it's where the 42 days comes in. It's a fellow who had colon cancer that had metastasized to his liver, and he was basically told he had 6 months to live. And he got the best words that a person can ever hear from a doctor, and that is, there's nothing we can do. You're blessed when they say there's nothing we can do, because now there's a chance for healing. Okay. But anyway, so then he said, okay, well, I'm going to stop eating until I'm better. 42 days later, he started eating again. And that was 20 years ago.
And he did that at home, or he did that with you?
On his own. On his own. Drank a lot of water. He just knew enough to drink a lot of water. And he did that. And I know he's still alive. He hasn't had cancer in 25 years now. And he's got a great life in Sedona, Arizona. I mean, it's going good. Okay, so that's how, and he was the first one. I had a lady in San Diego do something. She went about 39 days, and she's still doing well. Now I've had other people who've done the 142, and they're still not better. Okay, they're still not better. So what I do with those people is say, now we need a good 4 to 8 weeks of really healthy eating, and build up some of your reserves and all that stuff, and then we'll do it again. Because you can't always get it all. And for a variety of reasons, you can't get it all. And it's like with almost any therapy, what we think should be enough is not always enough. So that's what happens. But I've had several people. I just recently had a woman come in who did 41 days, and we haven't done a scan yet, but she's feeling fantastic. And the visible tumor, which was on her chest, had shrunk greatly, but it was still there. It was still there. So we were able at that point to do some post injections and get eliminated in that way. But so it still wasn't there. So what she was going to do was go back and eat for 6 to 8 weeks of a really good, healthy diet, not necessarily ketogenic, but a good, healthy raw food, variety of all kinds of raw food. For about 6 to 8 weeks, when she was feeling strong again, all that, then go in for another water fast as long. It may not have to be that long. It may be only 6 weeks or 8 weeks. And it may have to be that you might have to do this at those kinds of intervals for a while, depending on what's going on. But we have to get away from the mindset that we're curing a disease. What we're doing is we're trying to reverse and turn off a particular process that's going on. And this process may take several starts and goes to do it. And like I said, for a variety of reasons, it didn't all go away. So let's get some cellular renewal. Let's get yourself eating again and all that. So you can build up a little fat, get your energy, get exercising again, and then do it. So
what would be some of the tips that you would give someone who wants to try a water fast at home, but maybe is hesitant, or should they jump right into it? Let's assume they are cancer patients. Is it safe to jump right into it? Is it better to do like 3 days at a time initially? Is there anything they should look out for in terms of water quality, etc.?
Well, again, we can't just lump cancer patients into one group. We have to know. If someone is way too thin already, then they really I need to feed them, or somebody needs to really evaluate whether it's safe. But for the average person who says they find out they have stage 2 or even stage 4 cancer, and they want to try to do this without going on the medicine route at first and all that sort of thing, as long as they have the average amount of weight, yes, you can get started immediately. The only reason that you might transition by, let's say, starting, some people go from eating a standard diet to eating just salads for a few days, and then they go to green juices for maybe another few days, and then they go to water, if it's only psychological. It's not necessarily anything to do with physically able to do it. If you're able to start your water fast, then you should, psychologically, then you should go with it. The one thing I would advise, absolutely, is maybe on 2, do a good enema or be able to get a colonic to clean out your bowels. One of the things you have to keep in mind about water is it has no fiber, and that you won't have the fiber to stimulate a bowel movement, and so you won't be moving your bowels that much. And so you're gonna have whatever amount of feces is in you will stay there, and the colon will always do what it was designed to do, and that is continue to reabsorb and reabsorb and reabsorb. So you're going to recycle toxins and it won't feel good. So really, if you can do that on like the beginning of day 2, again on day 4, and just do a couple of 2, 3, 4 enemas that day, or one good thorough colonic on days 2, day 4, and then maybe again on day 7, just to make sure you're really cleaned out. That I would always advise people to do.
And we're talking about water enemas, yeah?
Correct, saltwater enemas.
Saltwater enemas, yeah.
Now the water should be, now remember, if you're drinking water on a normal day, and you're also eating food, then yes, you could have distilled water, and that, just pure H2O, because you're going to get your minerals and everything else from other sources. But if you're just doing a water fast, you don't want to do distilled water. Okay, then you do need to have, a mineral or spring water or something like that. So now the alkaline water, you can be using, get the alkaline water, but you don't want to go crazy with that. You don't want something that's a pH of 8 or 9, because that's really, again, as unnatural as acidic water. You want to get something that's probably got a, pH of 7.5, 8, right? Like that. You don't want to go higher than that. People go to the other extreme. And you got to remember that alkaline is just as deadly as acid. I mean, when you think of the stuff that they put, Lye, that they put down drains, is got a pH of 9.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just as bad as
too
sticking
alkaline.
your finger.
Yeah.
It's too acid, yeah.
Yes. Okay, good. I think we'll end on that. I think that sheds a lot more light for people that want to maybe venture into it or try it. And it's good to know that it's something ancient and it's instinctive. That's reassuring as well. So we'll see what questions they have for us. If you have any questions, put them in the comments, and we'll take it from there for future episodes. Thank you very much, Dr. Lodi.
You're welcome.
شكرا لمتابعتكم. إذا تحبون تسألون أي سؤال عن صيام الماء اللي تكلمنا عنه اليوم، حطوا لنا في التعليق سؤالكم، وإن شاء الله نجاوب بعض الأسئلة في الحلقات القادمة. لا تنسون تشتركون في القناة أيضا، ولا تنسون أن الحلقة فيها ترجمة بالعربي، فارسلوها لكل أحبائكم وإن شاء الله تعمل فائدة. شكرا لمتابعتكم.